in the art of controlling your life, and the soon-to-be release, We Are in Victory, a guide to being a liver transplant recipient. His motto is, to the world you may be one person, but to one person you may be the world.
Absolutely.
Donate life.
Yes.
Robert Brazell.
Nice.
Thank you for coming today. It's a great event. I understand it's the first year. I think it's very successful. I'm looking forward to my wife and I participating in the future. I have a few notes. As Celestine said, my wife and I volunteer at UMD&J Hospital. I want to thank Celestine and everybody for organizing this event. I'd like to thank Senator Cunningham for her participation. Approximately 3 years ago, after being really sick and for a couple of weeks, I woke up one morning and I was bright yellow. And I had never been in the hospital a day in my life, literally, well, not literally. I broke my toe when I was 11 years old, and that was it. And my son said to me, if you don't go right to the emergency room, I'm going to carry you to the emergency room. And he could do it, it's like here. So, I went, and I was diagnosed with liver disease after a while, and told that I would require a liver transplant. My wife and I just, we looked straight at the doctor and we said, excuse me? I've never been sick. How could I possibly need a liver transplant? Finally, I received a transplant at UMD&J Hospital. I was in 3 hospitals for a total of 6 months straight. I was quite ill when I finally got my transplant. I'd like to just give you a little bit of a background, quick, just a little information. I want to read some of it so I don't make a mistake. The liver is one of the largest organs in the body. It weighs about 3 pounds. It acts as basically a chemical factory. Nutrients brought to the body in the form of food and drink, broken down through the digestive tract. These nutrients are carried to the blood and rebuilt into a wide array of proteins and other compounds. The liver is a key organ involved in removing toxins from the blood and aiding the digestive system. Some of the causes of liver disease, hepatitis is among one of the most common cause of liver failure. A general term that refers to inflammation of the liver. Hepatitis is usually caused by viral infection, excessive use of alcohol and illicit drugs, of course, and actually the person's own immune system. It's estimated that there are 4 million Americans that are infected with hepatitis C virus. It causes almost no symptoms until the liver's been damaged, and in many cases irreparably. Another is liver cancer. Liver cancer is one of the most common forms of cancer in the United States, in the world, but very uncommon in the United States, which I thought was odd. And although, unfortunately, the rates of diagnosis in the United States are rising. Cancer that begins in other areas of the body, such as the colon or lung or breast cancer, and then spreads to the liver, is called metastatic cancer, meaning that the liver, the cancer has metastasized and moved to the liver. So if you have, God forbid, metastatic lung cancer, that means that it has spread to your liver. Of course, alcohol and drug use, very common cause of liver damage. Alcohol and illicit drug use is known to extremely damage the liver. Heavy drinking or even an occasional binge can cause serious damage. If you drink over a long period of time, the damage, of course, becomes worse. First, it builds up as fatty deposits in the liver, which then hardens and permanently damages tissue. The healthy cells are destroyed, and fibrosis becomes cirrhosis. You've heard of cirrhosis of the liver. And this can also be caused by infections and a whole variety of things. And genetic liver failure, which is also becoming more common, there are many forms of genetic. Hemochromatosis is where the iron that passes through your body cannot be processed by your liver. Wilson's disease is similar, but it's copper that cannot be processed. And maybe you've heard of antiribsin deficiency. It's called A1. This has to do with specific proteins in the body not being able, the liver not being able to handle them. All right, well, the transplant, when you're diagnosed with liver disease, and it's determined that you require a liver, you'll be placed on a waiting list. When you receive the call telling you that the liver's become available, and you know, my wife and I, we volunteer, as I said, and we deal with a lot of patients, and the story's always the same. There's no such thing as a good time. There's no such thing as expecting it to happen. You know, you're told to keep a bag packed and certain things in it and what have you. But when that call comes, you got about 2 hours to get to the hospital. Cells team, yeah. And you know, for admittance and prepping and what have you, and it's amusing anyway to me. I hope it's amusing to you. When I got called, when we got to the hospital, it was my niece, the day of my niece's engagement party, and my sister was having this big catered affair. So I didn't eat in the morning. I said, "Oh, I want to see what Barbara has," you know. So we get to my sister's, and the caterer was late. There was no food there, and I'm starving. And the phone rings, and my wife's in the kitchen, and she comes out, and she's just like, the color had gone from her face. She said, "They just called and said, there's a liver. You have a liver, we gotta go." So I'm looking at this table, there's dishes on it, and there's no food, and I'm like backing out, and everyone said to me, you know, were you scared? I said, well, yeah, I was scared that I was gonna get out of there before the caterer came. So I get to the hospital, and this wonderful young nurse, her name was,
Deanna.
Deanna. I was like, you know Deanna? Deanna did all the prep work. She was great. You know, very calming, soothing. You know, we were having a good time with it. And I had a bag of jelly beans in my travel bag. And I said, could I have a couple of these? You know, I haven't eaten all day. And she said, oh, no, you know, you can't even have water. And I said, well, you know, if you let me have a couple, I'll give you the bag. And she said, and she just looked straight at me. She said, you give me the bag, and I'll give you a liver. I thought, well, you know, how do you argue with that? So after that, you prep, you go down, you wait. The procedure takes anywhere from about 6 to 12 hours, the actual surgery. In my case, I think it was about 9, was it?
11.
11. I was asleep.
Keep her.
And unfortunately, you know, you're asleep, but your caregiver's wandering the halls of the hospital, you know, so God forbid it happens to you. Make sure there's backup people who will come. And in my case, my stepson and his dad stayed all night, all through into the morning with my wife, and, you know, it's very important. Your recovery, after the procedure, you spend time in recovery like any surgery. And then you're transferred to intensive care. Again, I don't remember much of that time period, little bits here and there. And as you improve, you'll again be transferred to a step-down room, where an incredible amount of care and soul-searching and television watching, you know, awaits you. They monitor you for many things. One of the primary is infection. There's an old saying in the liver transplant community that you don't die of rejection, you die of infection. And there are so many, and of course, infections that exist in hospitals alone. One of which, unfortunately, I got that kept me in the hospital for an extra 6 weeks. And sometimes, you know, it quite often takes people's lives. The same infection I had got into the bone marrow of a friend of ours, and he didn't make it. And then after the norm is about 8 days, you go home. In my case, that was true. I went home for 21 hours and came back in an ambulance and spent the next 6 weeks back in the hospital. So, but that's very unusual. There are people that we talk to who never look back. They go home, they do their regular, yeah, she is. Let's have a round of applause. And then they, of course, you know, there's a regimen of medication, very serious. When I got home, I was taking 64 pills a day. The anti-rejection medications that will suppress the immune system so that your body doesn't naturally